Today, I would like to talk about Darth Vader, the philosophy behind redemption, and how a villain becomes a hero, morally, philosophically, and historically. Now, let's talk about Darth Vader. He's a guy who walks like a tank, breathes like he's allergic to oxygen, and somehow manages to be one of the deepest philosophical characters ever written. Most people look at Darth Vader and see a villain with the helmet, the cape, the force choking, the whole package. But the point of this presentation is to show how someone who falls so far can still rise again, and why that rise is what earns him the title of hero. I consider him, I consider him a hero not because he never failed, but because he changed. Here's the question that makes everyone uncomfortable. Can someone who's done horrible things ever be considered a hero? Philosophers have been wrestling with this forever. Aristotle gave us the concept of the tragic hero as someone who falls because of a fatal flaw but finds truth through suffering. Now, Vader fits this blueprint perfectly because, his flaw was fear and his fall was catastrophic. And his clarity, even though it was earned in the hard way, he ended up heroic. Now, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, as all of us know, there's a myth, a legend, a story bigger than reality. I consider myths, you know, um, myths aren't about lightsabers, right? They're about human nature. They exaggerate big truths so we can see them more clearly. Now, Vader's story is a mythic journey, a warning. It also could be a possibility. He shows us what happens when someone loses themselves and what it takes to find themselves again. Fate versus free will. Anakin starts his life like a character out of an ancient legend, born of the Force, which is basically the Star Wars version of fate. That puts him in the same philosophical category as Gilgamesh, Joan of Arc, and Alexander the Great. People burdened with destiny before they can spell the word. The philosophical tension here is really simple. Are we defined by the conditions we're born into, or by the choices we make afterward? Anakin's life is one long wrestling match with this question. This slide shows the world he enters, a culture built on discipline, conflict, and expectation. The Jedi preach emotional control, but fight constant battles. It's a system full of contradictions, and Anakin grows up inside these contradictions. He doesn't fall because he's weak, he falls because the world around him demands impossible perfection for someone who feels everything too deeply. Love versus attachment. Now, we reach the philosophical pivot point, the attachment. Anakin loves fiercely and fearfully. That fear becomes the engine of his downfall. Philosophers have, from Buddhism to classical Stoicism, warned about this. When love becomes possession, it stops becoming love or being love. You have parallels with Shah Jahan, Mark Antony. They're both powerful men driven into ruin by overwhelming attachment. It's not the emotion that destroyed them, it's the desperation to control of what they cannot. Anakin didn't turn dark because he, stopped loving. He turned dark because he loves without wisdom. A man of focus. And here we talk about Jedi versus Sith. This is the philosophical clash at the center of Darth Vader's life. As we all know, Jedi's philosophy is complete stoicism. You control your emotions, master yourself through discipline. And on the other hand, we have the Sith philosophy, which is completely the opposite. Embrace your emotions, embrace passion. We use it, we unleash it. both are at the extreme ends. And like most extremes, they break the people stuck inside them. You compare, when compared to Bushido Code or the Spartan discipline, these are the systems that create exceptional individuals but demand sacrifices that can twist or harden a person. As we know, Anakin tries to live in the middle of two incompatible paths. The conflict splits him long before he ever puts on the mask. Finally, the fall. Fear to power to corruption. This is when Anakin's fall becomes unavoidable. Fear transforms into a desire for control. Control transforms into power. Power without balance becomes corruption. This isn't something supernatural, it's philosophical cause and effect, I think. The moment Anakin believes he's alone can bend the world, him alone can bend the world into the shape he wants. He stops being a guardian. He and then he becomes an enforcer. All I am surrounded by is fear and dead men. The strongest Anakin has ever been. Now, when I say utilitarianism gone wrong, it means like I'll do something bad now to create something good later. It can sound noble for the moment, but it actually isn't. Anakin wanted peace, but he chose the most immoral methods, which is something we can clearly see in our history. And Nietzsche's warning that when you chase power to fix the world, you risk becoming the thing you're fighting. It's a great quote, yeah. And the failure of the Jedi Order. All the Jedi, all they ever preached was emotional suppress. Is to all the Jedi ever preached was to suppress your emotions. But on the other hand, suppressing emotions doesn't erase the emotion, or don't really erase the emotions. It just makes them explode later, at least. Now, Napoleon and Ashoka remind us that even real leaders have walked this same arc. They had great intentions, great power, great downfall, and sometimes great redemption. These images of Napoleon and Ashoka ground Vader's story in something bigger than fiction. History isn't a straight line of heroes and villains. It's full of people who did harm, transformed, and later became symbols of wisdom or peace. And Vader fits this pattern. He's a myth following the structure of reality. And here we come. Vader's redemption is his heroism. Vader is not a hero because he avoided darkness. He's a hero because he walked through it and still chose the light at the end. His final act was saving his son. He destroyed the Emperor. But he wasn't driven by pride, power, or fear. He was driven by clarity. He was driven by truth, by love, understood correctly, and finally, at the end, we have the final quote. A hero is someone who rises even from the darkest place. This is the heart of heroic philosophy. The path back matters more than the path down. Anyone can fail, not everyone can rise. But Vader did. This is Anakin as the Force Ghost. We can also see that Anakin is at peace, not because his past has disappeared, but because he finally became the person he was meant to be. And that is to return to the truth. I think it's a great philosophical definition of redemption. That's why Darth Vader, oddly enough, earns the right to be called a hero, in my senses.